Welcome everybody, I hope you're doing well. I'm Molly Rodriguez Dominant. Today I'm going to be showing you every Kendrick Lamar vinyl that I have in my record collection. Seems like the perfect time to be talking about Kendrick Lamar. There's no particular reason why I'm doing this video, just seems like the perfect time to be talking about Kendrick Lamar for no particular reason. Very quickly before the video starts, I just want to say we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We are literally just under 200 subscribers, so thank you everyone who's subscribed so far. If you're new to the channel, or if you've been watching for a little while but haven't pressed that subscribe button yet, please go ahead and do it because it will help support me so much, as well as just liking the video, helping push the video out on the algorithm. But anyway, let's talk about some Kendrick Lamar, and I'm gonna not go in chronological order in here of album releases, but I'm gonna start off with the first Kendrick Lamar vinyl that I brought, and that was Damn. Now, Damn as a record for me is actually very special for multiple reasons. The first of which is, as a vinyl record, I love it in terms of how it looks. I mean, at first when you see the light, the ring light go over it, you can see that the Damn logo is actually reflective. I'm not sure what the actual material is called in that instance, but not really for that, but just for how it looks when you open it up. I don't know what it is. This just stays in my mind every time I look at the record, or every time I think of the record, I should say, because just look how gorgeous this opening looks to it. I love the way the credits are laid out. I love the way Damn is included in there again. And overall, if I could, I would actually probably just put this out as its own little poster. So for in the sense of how the vinyl record itself actually looks, I love it for that aspect. But more on a deeper level, I actually love it because in my own perception of how I came across hip hop and rap, this is the album that truly got me into the world of rap and introduced me to it. Because I might have said this story a little bit before, but like, I spent a lot of time literally when I was going through my phase of transitioning from heavy metal into the world of hip hop, I basically just listened to heavy metal and then just listen to Eminem and no one else. And maybe through some Eminem features, I'd listen to other artists, but I hadn't fully like invested myself into listening to anyone outside of Eminem in terms of rap and hip hop. And that will change when this album released, because this would actually probably also be the first like rap album that I was like around for or there for when the album dropped. And obviously I love Eminem and his music, but I don't think I could like say that you can get a bigger introduction into the world of hip hop as this album, especially from an artist as creative as Kendrick Lamar is. I've done several like watches of videos like analyzing this album, breaking it down, showing the deeper meanings of stuff, especially like this whole thing where it's supposed to be a whole fight against wickedness and weakness. The whole concept of damn itself actually being a meaning for damned by God, and the curse that, as Kendrick calls people, Israelites, those types of people actually being cursed by God. And then the track list also being basically like two different timelines and versions of event based on the last song, Duckworth. Can't remember his name right now, but if Kendrick's dad hadn't have given the other guy basically free chicken, he would have shot up the place and probably killed Kendrick's dad, meaning Kendrick wouldn't have had the life that he had lived and probably gone into a life of drugs, gang violence, and all that sort of stuff. Whereas if you listen to the album in reverse, it basically takes that timeline and puts it where Kendrick's dad had unfortunately got shot up because he didn't do what he did, and Kendrick went into that life of crime and gang violence. There's a really nice concept on this album, and I really love it and really appreciate it. And beyond all that, the songs are incredible themselves. For me, this album, so about 2017 to 2018 for me, it basically captures my first year of college, and it gives me a lot of nostalgia for those times. I have a really nice connection to this album for that reason, and just some of my favorite songs on here, you've got Humble, obviously, is probably the big banger off this album, which originally was meant for Gucci Mane, which is quite interesting to think about when you consider what this song became. Love's another one I really appreciate, DNA, Loyalty, Pride, Element, like I'm literally just naming off the track list at this point, but they're all really good songs in my opinion. So that is Damn. That's probably my favourite one to have begun with. Then I do have the discs included here as well. It literally just has the Damn logo there, but nothing too special about them particularly. It's just kind of regular black disc. So next up we have Good Kid, MaAd City, and to me, this is probably #1 in Kendrick's discography. I don't think there's really too much you have to say to explain why this album is so good. There's a back view of the record itself, and I think what makes this album prove that Kendrick is one of the best is his storytelling throughout it, which is done in a very Quentin Tarantino-esque style, as that's how I believe he actually described it himself in terms of how he was writing it. Basically bringing some cinema aspects into music. and using that to basically show what it's like to actually be living in somewhere like Compton. I will say this record, like in terms of the vinyl and the design of it, is nothing too crazy about it, but what I do like is this added element where you basically get like some more Polaroids from within his actual family, and just like kind of makes a bit more of a connection between the story that is being told and the people actually on there being real people. And it just gets, it's just that extra thing that helps you kind of like picture the world when you're listening to the album. So whilst to me I think it's quite a simple design, it's really nice in terms of what it helps add to the creation itself. Yeah, it doesn't actually come with any inserts in this, but obviously it goes with the Polaroid theme there. I think some of my favourite songs on this is, I mean, Poetic Justice would have been one of them, but it's kind of, due to recent events, it feels wrong to listen to. Backseat Freestyle, like basically the reason that song is there is because it's like Kendrick just sort of like showing what like at the age of 16 the sort of rapping he was doing back then. But as much as like kind of like unserious it is, I do really like the song. Money Trees is a great one. Sing About Me I really love. Compton featuring Dr. Dre is actually really cool. Obviously Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe, that one's always in my summer playlist no matter what year. When it comes to the records themselves, it is literally just simple plain black, but again, still quite nice. And yes, before anyone thinks or asks anything, I have recently upgraded at least how I'm trying to protect my records nowadays. I basically got a nice inner sleeve as well as an outer sleeve. I think I got them from a place called Spin Care. Basically, literally, you can get them on Amazon. I highly recommend them. I don't know how to explain it, but it just makes it feel really nice when I'm like grabbing my records. I think something about it makes it feel like you're almost like grabbing it out of like a record store. I think that's the best way I can really explain it, but either way, they're great for protecting your records. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is To Pimp a Butterfly, and I won't lie, a lot of people consider this to be Kendrick's best album, and I can completely see why, but except from one album, it's probably my least listened to Kendrick album, and it's one that I kind of need to indulge myself in a lot more to fully appreciate it, I guess. I think conceptually, I prefer Good Kid MaAd City. However, when I think of the music on here, or at least the ones that like really stand out to me, I would put them over a lot of the songs that I would like say are the best on Good Kid MaAd City. Like with the song Alright or with King Kunta. I think those two really stand out as like top tier songs in Kendrick's discography. Like in terms of if I was to rank all his songs, those two would probably be up there above some songs from Good Kid MaAd City in my opinion. However, this, I know I was saying really good things about the inside of Damn, but the inside of this one, I just think is absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. And I think it really matches like the whole theme of the album, which is to pimp a butterfly, obviously making something that already looks amazing look even better. And I think that theme is shared spectacularly well in the design and layout of this inside of this gatefold. I think even in like how both album covers are sort of like presented, like if you take a look there, obviously they're very similar in terms of their look and how they are. However, I think the album covers also are great at kind of telling you what the difference is between them. Good Kid MaAd City is a very personal experience to Kendrick and telling you more about his life, whereas whilst To Pimp a Butterfly does share elements of his personal life, I think it's more of a movement and about the culture that of course he's experienced, but it's more about people as a whole rather than just about like a focus around something that's happened in his life. I think that's where the two albums sort of like differentiate. But to also add, there's the back of it there as well. Another great album, and to be honest, when I look at Kendrick's discography, he doesn't have a bad album. And there's not a lot of artists you can say that about. Granted, sure, maybe he hasn't been the best at like putting out albums, but when he has, they've been worthwhile. So this is what I believe to be the fourth Kendrick album that I did get on record, and it is obviously Section 80. Now, this is not an actual official release. I had a little bit of a look on Discogs because I was just curious about what it actually was, and it's just basically an unofficial release. And when you look through this, you can kind of tell that it's an unofficial release, especially when you compare the quality of those previous albums that I showed you to how this one is. It feels like what you would get from like an independent artist, which is kind of what this album was. Obviously it was with Top Dog Entertainment Records, so it's not exactly independent, I don't think. I don't know the right sort of terminology of stuff like that and how to actually correct readily associate it, but you can just tell this isn't an official release. Now when it does come to me and collecting vinyl records, I try not to get like bootleg stuff or unofficial stuff. I really like my collection to be as official as it can be. But I think the reason why I did pick this one up, or I might have actually, this one was probably included as a birthday present more than anything. I remember being in a record store, I believe it was Rough Trade in Bristol, and I was just like seeing what they had in the hip hop section and whatnot, and then I suddenly saw Section 80 on there, and this album, when I discovered it, I was addicted to it. I love just everything on here. I love the sound of it. I love the entire vibe of the album. I just love, there's just so much to enjoy about this album, and I think it's like, what's essentially Kendrick's first album. I think it stands out as probably one of the best first albums an artist can have. Now you'll see kind of what I mean about the whole, like, especially if you look at the back there, you can tell it's kind of like got that sort of, someone's gone on Photoshop or whatever it is and just put a track list together and what they think might look good, and then even how the records themselves look and feel, there's just something off about them that doesn't look particularly nice. And even both records are actually different like colors, like it's not nice to look at as a record, which is a shame due to like how good of an album Section 80 is. But obviously I ain't gonna hold any grudges against Kendrick or his team for this, because it's not actually an official release by them, which I do wish it was. I kind of hope like maybe when there's an anniversary or something of the album we can get something for it, but for now I think this is close I'm gonna get to being able to own Section 80 on vinyl. But nonetheless, it's a nice one to be able to say that I've kind of got. Now with this next one, I'm not sure if people would really say it's a Kendrick Lamar album. Like, I wouldn't consider it that, because it's a soundtrack, which is obviously Black Panther, and this is one of my favourite soundtracks of recent years. I think there was no better person to put on the case of making a Black Panther soundtrack than Kendrick Lamar. Like, whoever made that decision, or if Kendrick came to them, whoever it was, incredible decision to let him do it, because he perfectly captures what Black Panther is all about. As you can see, there are some symbols which I believe is from the Black Panther or Wakandan language. Probably the most standout track on here is All of the Stars. I'm looking back on this track list and I'm just like, I need to go and listen to it again, and I might do that after this video, because damn, it's such a good album, genuinely. And also I think that is like the perfect cover as well. Essentially it's all black, but everyone knows what these now mean. Obviously that it's the Black Panther. Very simple on the back there with just a track list, but like, if you don't want to say that this is the best like movie soundtrack of all time, you can definitely say it's the best soundtrack within Marvel. Obviously Guardians of the Galaxy probably give it a run for its money, but for me as a hip hop fan, this really hits the spot. Now we are moving on to basically his latest release, which is Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and this one is actually a limited edition version of the album, because as you can see we've basically got some limited edition versions of the records. So with this, what we can look at is what was basically described to be, when I first bought it, as gold. This feels a bit more greener to me than what I would describe gold as, which I'll be completely real with you. And before I do say this, this has nothing to do with the music of Mr. Morale. This is simply just basically how this album came to me. I just remember feeling when I received it in the post and whatnot, and when I got it delivered, it was one of the most disappointing experiences I had getting a vinyl record. The first one of those reasons is because of how I was expecting the record to be. I think I was expecting a bit more of like a shinier gold, or just something a bit more standout than this kind of like dull green. The second reason, which I'm not going to complain too much about, is it's not a gatefold, which I think would have done really well in this. And obviously, as I've shown you from Pimp a Butterfly and Damn, and even Good Kid MaAd City, Kendrick's albums always have a nice inner design when it comes to the gatefold. So I feel like something like that for Mr. Morale could have gone really hard. But also the third thing was there was damage to this. Like, it hadn't been opened and there was already damage somehow to these. So basically, it might seem like a really minor thing. Stop focusing on my sweaty forehead. You can kind of see where it looks like two vampire teeth on there, but it's like essentially got ripped on that, and that's only the first inner sleeve. It also kind of got damaged. Second one's actually fine, to be fair. So that was a bit of disappointment. But also the fourth thing, I don't know if it's still there on these, I'm not entirely sure, but the records themselves were actually really badly pressed. I'm not sure if that's the right term to use about this particular problem, but I might have actually torn it off. But essentially on, like, say the sides of the records, there was actually just a like bit of wax where it hadn't been cut off the production line properly, so it's like literally there was a bit of wax or whatever you would call it, just like kind of like dangling off of the record when I received it. So that was another disappointment to add to it. So in terms of getting this record, it wasn't my best experience, I'll say. I will still say I do really like when you get these type of inserts or protective sleeves for the records, because then it means that just because it like feels like it adds more rather than it just being a white sleeve. And this is another thing that kind of like links really well into it, because obviously Mr. Morale and Big Steppers is basically broken down into 2 different albums essentially. It's a double album, and you kind of get the first disc which goes over the first part, and then you get the second that goes over the second part. And I think what this also shows is a continuation of the theme that Kendrick's kind of done, especially in his music videos and in Damned particularly. If you go and watch a lot of his music videos, you see there's almost like 2 different versions of Kendrick. One of them tends to be wearing white, whereas the other version tends to be wearing black, which kind of shows his 2 sides of things. And obviously Mr. Morale having the 2 different discs. And I do like how even the way that the inserts are being designed, I like how they're feeding into it. There you have the cover of it, and there you have the back cover of it, which I think like says quite a lot in itself. I think one of the things that I do love about this album, I think, I'll be completely honest, this is another album of Kendrick's that I haven't listened to the most, partly because of how heavy of a listen it is. I think you kind of have to be in a proper like mindset to be listening to this project. And I think one of the things that sort of stood out to me the first time I actually listened to it is like, say something like Good Kid MaAd City, to Butterfly, basically any other Kendrick album, he has hits on there and songs that really like stand out. You can play it at a party and whatnot, or you can just listen to it and kind of get in a proper feel for. And I think the closest thing you get to that on this album is N95 or Die Hard, and I think that's something that kind of makes this album stand out as its own thing, different from anything Kendrick's done in the past. And I think it kind of fits with what he's going for on this album, which isn't about being like this mega rap superstar or anything like that. He's being himself, and he's opening his doors up to his current very private life, that whilst he's talked about his personal experiences as a kind of like kid in something like Good Kid MaAd City, this one is really focusing on what's going on with him now and kind of opening his doors to stuff we haven't really been able to see. And it's probably his most brutally honest album, and I think it's one that I'm going to continue to go back to every once in a while. And I think every time I'm going to listen to it, I'm going to have a bigger appreciation for it than the previous listen I had. Now, I have already said quite a bit about Good Kid MaAd City, however I'm going to have to come back to it, because Kendrick Lamar, for the 10th year anniversary of Good Kid MaAd City, he released some limited edition versions of the album, and there were various different ones. I believe there was kind of one with an alternative cover in a similar style to the one he uses on the vinyl that I showed you there. In fact, it actually might have been the original cover, and whereas I think that cover that I've got there is like the deluxe cover maybe? I can't remember which way it is. There was something like that, and it came with like a red coloured vinyl. However, I didn't go for that one. I much preferred this version of the album. There's a bit of a better look at it there for you. There's just something that's like so hard hitting about sort of black on black album covers, and this one is one of them to me. The rest of this, in terms of how it looks, is basically the exact same as Good Kid MaAd City, just in black and white. Same for the back of it there. I just really love the effects that this added to it, and at first when I got the discs, I didn't know how they were going to be, and I kind of thought they might just look like any old record. However, the way they are described are as black ice, and you can't really get any sort of sense of the effect when I show you like this. However, we take it out, and hopefully a light will show us a bit more. There you go. This is what black ice on record looks like. I'm apologising that you see my arm through it. However, I think this might actually be one of my favourite like effects in terms of transparency, in terms of the coloured. I don't know if that's what you really call it. Obviously it's a transparent record, but I love this black ice effect. Whatever it is, I do really like it. And actually, one of the things I just noticed on this itself is it obviously says under Good Kid MaAd City. It's a short film by Kendrick Lamar, obviously linking into that whole thing of the album being a bit of a film. So yeah, this is a really special one, and one that I was super glad to be able to pick up. And obviously, if you know me, like when it comes to someone like Eminem, I try and get a lot of his like limited edition collector's stuff. And outside of him, I think The Weeknd, I've got quite a few limited edition versions of his stuff. But to be able to get one for an artist like Kendrick Lamar, I'm super glad to be able to have, and I think I'm going to try and go on my way to get a couple of other limited edition vinyls of his. Oh no. I said the word vinyls. What I meant to say was I'm going to try and get more limited edition records of his. Please don't castrate me. But yeah, I think this is probably one of my favourite like anniversary editions of a record that I've got. So Good Kid MaAd City, great limited edition version of the album. Now, in case you haven't been keeping score, we are now on the final Kendrick Lamar record of mine that I own, and that is Untitled, Unmastered. And I'll be completely honest in saying I need to really go back and listen to this one. I think essentially the title of this album tells you what it is. It's basically unreleased songs of his. I think there's 8 on it. I have listened to it before, but I need to do like a proper listening to it because I can't actually remember anything on it. It's been such a long time. Just showing you that there is just a regular black vinyl disc, but as I mentioned, Kendrick doesn't miss, and this one, despite probably being like the lowest on my ranking currently right now of his albums, it's still a good listen. I just need to go back and listen to it. I'm just being as honest as I can on that, sorry. But for now, that has been my Kendrick Lamar vinyl collection. In terms of what's missing, I can only think of one that really stands out in terms of what I want to get, and that is Damn. Obviously I do have Damn, but a little while ago, I think it was either a year or 2 after the release, it might have even been quicker after that, he basically released a black and white version of Damn, but it also had the track list in reverse as well, and I think there were like a limited number of them and whatnot. There was still like a lot of them out there, and it's like one of those things I always kind of like punch myself over, because it's like I literally remember being in HMV and seeing it on the shelves and whatnot, and I just remember like this is at a point where I was, again, like I'm still like new to music, or at least like to hip-hop at that point. Didn't even have any like knowledge on how vinyl records or vinyl collecting even worked, so I kind of like saw it and I was like, oh, that's cool, that's an alternate cover. I've already got Damn though, so I won't bother about getting it yet. Here I am wishing I had picked it up, because now it's at least worth 100 quid rather than the 30 or 40 it would have been worth then. Obviously I have mentioned the other 10th anniversary edition of Good Kid MaAd City. I'm not too bothered about it. I feel like I've got the better one here. I'm just glad to have a version of the 10th anniversary edition. But other than that, I can't actually think of any other Kendrick Lamar albums that I'm missing from my collection. But I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know in the comments if you have any Kendrick Lamar vinyl, which one is your favourite one. Are there any missing in my collection that you notice that I should probably pick up and at least look into getting? Again, please subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy this video, and also if you did enjoy the video, leave a like, always helps. But for now, I've been Ollie with Drew Stallman. I shall leave you, and take care.